You could also do it photographically. He told me to be able to have your hand like forward and expand it out.
Yeah. We made the little clips first. And then
Okay, for the presentation, I really enjoyed it and all the tips.
Hey, everyone.
Yes, sir, you did. Thank
Let's
you
get
so
started
much.
with the presentation. Go.
These are both going to be short, I promise. And I hope one will be a surprise to some of you, but it won't be to all of you. First, does everybody remember this votive model? And I put that in quotes. Yes. I brought it in some years ago and talked about it a little bit. It was left in a box in the front of the museum and nobody wanted it. I didn't want it, but I brought it in and the question was asked and a poll was taken. The presentation was about conservation, restoration, repair, preservation, all those things that museums do. And the fact that they have very specific clarifications in them. In other words, if you're going to conserve, conserve something, you're not going to change anything. You're not going to add anything permanently or subtract anything permanently. If you've got carte blanche for a rebuild, you can turn the Santa Maria into the Queen Elizabeth if you want. This is not going to be turned into anything valuable, but the vote was taken to actually restore this one. So I've begun the restoration process. I'm just reminding you with that of what it is I do for the most part now. So nothing more about that. This is another one. Some time ago, the upper left was presented to me. It's a clipper ship. It didn't have a name. And I told the owner, this is not worth restoring. Tried to talk him out of it, His wife said, Mr. Lewis, you are our last hope. This is what I sent back to him after 1,700 hours of restoration work. It's still rather crude. The hull itself is a log that was carved into shape. So you can imagine the time spent with that. I finally delivered it to him after, as I said, 1,700 hours. And unfortunately, 6 months later, he died. What I did not know was that he had lung problems, breathing problems. I can't remember the term, COPD. The end result, and most of you know how I contract my work, was that his family wrote a check to the museum when he received it. He was able to live with it at least for 6 months. Wrote a check to the museum for $2,500. Someone said, but how about you? And my standard answer is, what part of volunteer do you not understand? So it just makes me happy to see the museum benefit from it, and he at least had 6 months with his ship. The ship is rather large. It's 51 inches long. It's in a vitrine. That's about 4. Vitrine is, of course, a plexiglass, about 4 feet high. 4 of us, 2 from the museum's crew, another volunteer, and myself, delivered the ship to his home into a very small room, which was the first part of this. The upper left is where it was. A very small room with a ceiling fan and 9-foot ceilings. And it was to be mounted on a table. Here's what happens. He already had the vitrine sitting on the table. We took the plastic top off, set the base on the floor, put the ship on it, put the plexi top back on, and the 4 of us carefully lifted this 4-foot high vitrine onto the table, dodging the ceiling fan, and fortunately finally getting it installed in his home. At the conclusion, I put this together. It's a several page, and this is just my scrap piece, a several page documentation of the process that I went through on this, that I gave him with the ship. Now, just having finished that, another ship came to my attention. It came to me in November 2019. The owner talked to me about it in 17. I didn't have time for it. I told him that. When he finally brought it in, I went through the whole process again of saying, Lynn, when this ship is done, it'll be at least 1,200 and possibly 1,400 hours. And I will expect you to make a significant contribution to the museum. It's going to be in the range of $2,000, $2,500. And he said, yes. And I said, I can buy you a brand new Constitution for $2,500 in a showcase. He said, but Ron, that's not what I want. This is a family heirloom. He doesn't know who built it, but it's gone through at least 2 or possibly 3 generations. And I will tell you those sails, if you touch them, fall apart completely. So he agreed to my terms. I started work on November 19th after having finished the 1,700 hours on the unnamed clipper ship, which acquired the name Pinnacook, and I thought it was kind of neat. The owner was from New England, and there was a tribe of Indians, Pinnacook tribe, which was absorbed into another Peak tribe. Yes, you said it. Yes, absorbed into that tribe. And he decided to name it the Pinnacook. So the clipper ship finally did have a name. But this one already has a name, and it's right there emblazoned on the washboards, Constitution. You and I know, anybody who's been on it, the Constitution doesn't say Constitution on the washboards. And nothing on the Constitution says USS because they didn't use that, except the gangway now because it's new. So here it is, the first day at the museum for diagnosis, and this is when I talked them out of it. Here's why. Imagine devoting the rest of your life to something that is this messed up. The bow of the Constitution is very blunt, and the hair rails and such are built out from it. The maker of this one had netting on either side of the bowsprit that the jib would fall down into where keep guys from going to sea. Made of screen wire, rusty screen wire.
I think I had that back then.
Yeah, of course. It was already rusty. Here's the bow. You see the nice little ornamentation at the top, certainly all hand done. And of course, the depth indicators. Well, I got his signature. So because I had his signature, let's get started. Take it completely apart. As a conservationist, I would never have taken it completely apart. But that's not what I'm doing. I'm restoring. And in many cases, rebuilding. How do you like that deck planking? It's obviously the natural grain of the pine. There was not a strip of decking on it. But it's coming apart. It's getting smoothed out. Constitution had well over 600 blocks. Many of the pieces that were used as blocks were beads. Some were broken. Some were hanging on by a thread for dear life. So I started making blocks. Oh, and also, that's one of the photographs I took after the last restoration of the Constitution. Carronades, the whole spar deck is nothing but carronades. This is a cannon. It's now on the gun deck. So let's make about 14 cannons because the original had cannons on it. And of course the carriages. And then I thought, what the heck? We're going to have some planking too. But I don't like the grain as planking. Coming along. I decided to leave cannons on the back of the after 14 guns on the spar deck. Got those set up. Incidentally, that grating there, when I got it, was another piece of screen wire. Threw that away immediately. Here are the carronades on the real old iron sides. So we had to make carronades. Made the forward guns, three starboard, made them carronades. Of course, they're also made from scratch. Or carronades, made in Quran and Sounds French, but it's actually Ireland. Which mast is accurate? This was the one on the, and that black tape represents molding. Rope represents molding. Which mast is most accurate? Well, let's go to Boston and find out. Can't see any molding there at all. There's some, but it's fairly invisible. So the lower masts are definitely going to be white. There they are. Now we've also done something with the cannon. The original builder had put a strip of what we used to call first aid tape, adhesive tape, medical tape, and cut square holes in it and nailed the cannon barrel. Well, we drilled it and put the shutters on and left the forward two cannons on port and starboard open for a salute, because this is as she came back after 18th overhaul. You'll also see the stairway getting ready to go onto the bowsprit. Again, black tape served as the stairway of the original. The sails, as I said, if you touch them, fortunately, my favorite sail maker lives with me. I'm proud of this because it's the first time I've ever done it. Whoop. That, of course, is Mrs. Lewis. She's my sail maker. Some of the sails are mounted. There. Now, there's the real one. There's what I've got to work with. Those of you who are illiterate, no, I'm not an artist. My hand is not as steady as it used to be, but there's no way I could reproduce that billet head except by hand, freehand. So practice, and hopefully come up with something that would not embarrass me. And ta-da! Gentlemen, I am not an artist. It took me 3 days to reproduce that very simple billet head design. When I say simple, you'll see that it's a S-curve all the way up and down with little pieces attached to it. So when I figured that out after 3 days, I said, okay, oops. Get out of the way, get out of the way.
Let's just escape.
Yeah. Thank you.
Easier to use.
That's the original stern. And back to Boston, camera in hand.
That's wonderful.
I'll go with that. Just happened to have an eagle the right size. I think that came from one of Heinz Schiller's boxes. Getting there. Those are the Constellation, that's the Constellation rigging plan. I spoke out to someone who's building it. It's kind of moth-eaten, but Constellation in the background, Constitution in the foreground. In the home stretch, you notice I don't have the driver or spanker on yet, but most of the rest of it is finished. And there's the finished, no, I'm sorry, that's the real one. Finished product. Now, this is what I gave to the owner of this ship. And I showed you before, I used to put it in a journal. If you do restorations, I would recommend you do this. Make a PowerPoint presentation, put it on a cheap thumb drive that you can get, I guess, as smallest you can get is like 32 gigs now. I've still got a couple of 6 megs or 12 megs hanging around. So put it on a thumb drive and give them a little message. The owner, on the day that he went home with the ship, which was last Wednesday, wrote a check to the Mariners Museum's general fund for $3,000. How much? $3,000. 1,200 hours of work. Now, that was just not the feature presentation. The feature presentation is coming up as soon as I can find it. And the feature presentation is even shorter than that. A couple weeks ago, one of the docents brought a fellow by the model stand when I was there. It was either Tuesday or Wednesday. I cannot remember. I'll tell you that his name is Lynn Newcomb. And we started talking about model ships. He was a model maker. Oops. And he was talking about a very recent addition to our 35,000 piece collection. Collections, John Bill Zegner, who is our collections expert, rules over a collection of artifacts and such that numbers well over 35,000 now. So this is maybe 35,001. Now, Bismarck was the first of two Bismarck class battleships built for Nazi Germany's Kriegsmarine. That simply means war navy. Named after Chancellor Otto von Bismarck, the ship was laid down at the Blohm and Voss shipyard in Hamburg in July 1936 and launched in February 1939. Work was completed in August 1940 when she was commissioned into the German fleet. Bismarck and her sister ship Tirpitz were the largest battleships ever built by Germany and two of the largest built by any Western European country. In the course of the warship's 8-month career under her sole, the German Navy, when the war broke out in 1939, had no way of matching the Royal Navy. She didn't. They only had 11 capital ships in the Kriegsmarine. Only limited effort was made to build a U-boat fleet. Rather, resources would be given to build large, superbly engineered ships to compete with all of the other navies in the world. Nothing symbolized this more than the Bismarck, the largest and finest battleship built until that time. Bismarck was a formidable, state-of-the-art battleship, the largest, most powerful warship in maritime history. 320 feet, as long as almost as long as the Titanic, 30 feet wider, and so heavily armed, weighed twice as much. Each barrel of its 15-inch guns weighed 250,000 pounds, each barrel, and each could destroy a ship over 15 miles away, over the horizon. The side armor was an advanced formula crump steel, 15-inch thick steel plate. Bismarck was a fierce predator, fast, deadly, considered unsinkable. Well, here's the sole commander, the sole captain of the ship in its 8-month life, Captain Ernst Lindemann. Bismarck conducted only one offensive operation lasting 8 days in May of 1941 and code-named Rheinbildung. The ship, along with the heavy cruiser Prince Eugen, was to break into the Atlantic Ocean and raid Allied shipping from North America to Great Britain. The two ships were detected several times off Scandinavia, and British naval units were deployed to block the route. At the Battle of Denmark Strait, the battlecruiser HMS Hood started firing and started the engagement 10 miles away. HMS Hood was initially engaged by Prince Eugen, probably by mistake, while HMS Prince of Wales engaged Bismarck. In the ensuing battle, RMS Hood was destroyed by the combined fire of Bismarck and Prince Eugen, which then damaged Prince of Wales and forced a retreat. Bismarck suffered sufficient damage from the 3 hits to force an end to the raiding mission. The destruction of Hood spurred a relentless pursuit by the Royal Navy, including obviously the Ark Royal, involving dozens of warships. 2 days later, heading for occupied France to effect repairs, Bismarck was attacked by 16 Fairey Swordfish biplane torpedo bombers from the aircraft carrier HMS Ark Royal. One scored a hit that rendered the battleship's steering gear inoperable. In her final battle the following morning, the already crippled Bismarck was engaged by 2 British battleships and 2 heavy cruisers and sustained incapacitating damage and heavy loss of life. The ship was scuttled to prevent her being boarded by the British and to allow the ship to be abandoned so as to limit further casualties. Most experts agree that the battle damage alone would have caused her to sink eventually. The wreck was located in June 1989 by none other than Robert Ballard and has since been further surveyed by several other expeditions. A detailed underwater survey of the wreck in 2002 showed that the sustained close-range shelling was largely ineffective against 15 inches of steel. In an effort to sink the ship, the many torpedoes launched at Bismarck were also completely ineffective, and the massive plating of the armor deck was also found to be virtually intact. Today, there should have been online, but he had other engagements. A fellow named Robert Bo Tomke from Lathrop Village, Michigan. Mr. Tomke has spent some time studying this historically remarkable ship as he built a 1/200 scale trumpeter model over a nearly 5-year period. June 15th this year, he donated it to the Mariners Museum. Our collection staff had few words for the model, but the one most prominent was, wow. When I saw it after a rich conversation with the artist, I could not find a better word. And now Bismarck, with details and answers from the owner. I'm sorry that part is not available. He began the trumpet 1/200 scale in October of 2014. He built some ships. He's by nature, he says, an amateur American historian. His quality objective was to achieve museum acceptable standards. And he uses the term museum quality from time to time in the 3-page bio that he sent me. Nobody knows what that means. And he said himself, whatever that means. Museum acceptable standards, however, seems about right to me. Is this something a museum would accept for display? I think in his case, there's very little question as to whether it would be accepted. He decided to join the Mariners Museum in 2019 because of his interest in the Monitor Conservation Project, the largest, incidentally, metals conservation project in the world right now. And he talked to Cindy Verser, I believe. He's not sure who he talked to. She encouraged him to send some photos of his ship, which he did. And then John Zegner and the Collections and Acquisition Committee got together and said, hell yeah, we want it. Well, that was planned for 2020. Well, we all know what happened in 2020. So he sat on it. He had spent 4.5 years and now another 2.5 years waiting for the proper time to be able to bring it to the Mariners Museum. Some of these pictures slightly fuzzy. I took them. I'll take credit or blame for it. And some very sharp.
How large is the model?
You know,
48 inches.
yeah, it's a 200 scale. Is it 48 inches?
It's about
Okay.
48.
I trust that. Yeah. Still. Bo will soon become a member of HRSMS. He lives in Michigan, as I said. His skills are non-pareil. He had taken 30 years off from building and started again with this. Soon you'll be able to see it. I don't know exactly how. Some of you have already seen it, I'm sure. Went back behind the scenes, as it were. And these were all taken in the workshop, so they weren't staged or anything of that nature. Well, now, he's built the Bismarck. Here's where he would come very much into the conversation. The hood. He has started the hood. The end of my part. You know, all of you who know me know that I'm not at all interested in ships that are later than 1840. So I didn't do a whole lot of study. on this battle or warships at all. But Bo Tomke did. And if you'd like to ask questions of him, I can give you his contact number. He would be very happy to talk to you. That's all I got, folks.
Thanks, Ron.
Not me. Shameless plug, man. On wet your whistle. There's a book here, HMS Hood. Give it for $1.
Oh, hi. Hi, where are we going for lunch?
I don't really know. I guess.
Sure.
Yeah, we pick a couple of places. Hey. Remember the place, barbecue? Cheese.
There's a newcomer always picks up the tab.
Smoke, yeah.
Yeah,
Who is coming?
I don't know. We've just decided. Yeah.
I have a ton of questions. But that's
probably be at least one.
really why I'm here. Is to learn about it, how to build, how to do it. It's worth doing. I started off the constellation.
You guys online, it's already get the gist. We've kind of wrapped up for the day. Thanks for joining us.
It's pretty ambitious start.
My pleasure. Hope to see you next month. Thank you for inviting me.
Which there's another guy.